hello, beautiful divine souls.
Welcome back to Goddess Unleashed or Goddess of Rebirth, the podcast, the show where we explore topics related to women's health and wellness. Today I have a very special guest. Her name is Lilibeth, and she's a passionate advocate for womb wellness and menstrual health. Lilibeth has been raising awareness about menstrual health dysfunctions that affect countless women globally. She will bring a unique perspective and a wealth of knowledge to our discussion today, so I'm extremely excited. We'll be diving into topics ranging from the importance of womb wellness to the challenges women face when dealing with menstrual health dysfunctions such as endometriosis, PMDD, and others. She will speak out of her personal experience and how she is also educating and helping other women heal as well. Lilibeth, welcome to the studio. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great because I'm really excited. I was looking forward to talking to you for like the whole week. So I'm really, really excited. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who's Lilibeth? What do you do and how are you impacting the world?
So I'm a stay-at-home mom mostly. But I also make jewelry and on the side, I teach women about menstrual health. So yeah, I'm mostly busy with my kids, but if I have the time and I have an event center that wants to have me host classes, then sometimes I do that on the weekends.
Beautiful, beautiful. Tell me a little bit about your story. What was your journey with your womb? How did you connect with it? And you were telling me about the problems you faced. How, tell me about your journey in that regard.
So when I was about 19 or 20, so this was about 11 years ago, I started experiencing really, really terrible cramps. Um, like, I mean, I had had like kind of some bad cramps, throughout my experience menstruating. You know, like I started when I was 12, and then like by the time I got to 19 or 20, it was just so bad. It was just like all of a sudden, it wasn't even gradual. It was just all of a sudden I had a period that was just so, so bad. I was vomiting from the pain. I was like doubled over and like on the floor. Like it was just, and I was just like, what the heck is going on? Like I didn't understand why it changed so quickly. And so I started Googling things like how to relieve menstrual cramps, and some of them were just very like random, I don't know, things that like didn't really help. Like take a magnesium bath or and that can be very helpful for some people, but like with the amount of pain that I was feeling, it was like it didn't do anything. Just very like arbitrary things that just didn't really help in the moment. So yeah, that kind of just led me on a journey of like trying to figure out like what was wrong, because I was like, if I had normal cycles before, like why can't I have normal cycles now, and I think that's really what like led me to that journey. Like I know a lot of people will just go get birth control, they'll go to a doctor, and I kind of like knew, like I felt like I knew that if I went to a doctor they would just tell me like, oh, just take some aspirin or something. So I never actually went to a doctor about it because I was just like, I just don't feel like they're really going to help. Like that's just menstrual cramps, right? Um, but yeah, so I just did a lot of Googling. I did a lot of like trial and error. I also joined this, it was like a newsletter. It was pretty popular about 10 years ago. It was called Elephant Journal, I think. And they did all sorts of, like, uh, women's health type things, sexual health type things. And they mentioned like yoni steaming in one of the newsletters, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and so I gave that a try. And just yeah, it probably took me about 4 years to like really get a handle on like what I was doing and how to heal. And because I was looking up ways to help through nutrition, through lifestyle, like there's so many different things. I tried all kinds of different diets to see if they would help. Most of them didn't. And so that's why it took so long because I really didn't have anyone to help me. It was just like I just had to like use Google as my best friend and like so yeah.
I had problems since I was a teenager. I remember my first period. I ended up at a private doctor because I couldn't handle the pain, and that was the first time, like the first time that I, well, not probably not the first period I had, but like the second period I had, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like 13, I think, and the pain, like as you described, I had to deal with that pain that made me vomit, and I had to be at the bathroom, like literally, I couldn't leave the
Mm-hmm.
toilet um, for like hours, and that was something that I needed to deal with while I was working, while I was at school, like
Mm-hmm.
because I couldn't stop my life. I couldn't say like, no, I cannot take this test or go to work just because I am dying.
Mm-hmm.
But which is one of the biggest reasons why I started my own journey. Like, how are we not forcing ourselves, but we're part of a system that has no compassion, no place for
Mm-hmm.
women who experience these kind of problems.
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what is something that you have learned about the female body? How do we work differently? Or what is something that perhaps younger women or women in general need to know that you have learned during your journey about our body that can help us understand our menstrual cycle better? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think that the main thing is just that like our society is really built on um a male perspective and it's really built on what males can do, not females. Um, and like like men are very much like the sun, like they come up every day and then they go down and then up and then, it's just constant, like, the sun is always there. And the women are so much more like the moon, where, sometimes we are full and we're energized and we can do lots of things. And then, like the new moon where it's dark, we're not so energized and we can't do as much as we did when we were full. And our bodies really do reflect that. And our bodies have, a cycle. We have the menstrual cycle, and it's different almost every single day. Um, and something that a lot of people don't know is that there are four phases to the cycle. There's the menstrual cycle or the menstrual phase that, everyone is aware of. But after that, there's the follicular, and then there's ovulation. Most people are aware of that one. And then after that, there's luteal. But most people call luteal the premenstrual phase, um, which is fine. But it's like, it would be nice to know like the real word for it, right? Like the real word for premenstrual phase is the luteal phase. And just understanding the different hormone fluctuations and the different energy levels that you would have throughout that cycle and how to nourish yourself so that the cycle is working properly. Um, that's mostly what I've learned. I think that that is like the biggest thing. Even if I didn't learn about like nutrition or about, like lifestyle, I think like the biggest thing that women need to understand is their actual cycle and how it works and the different hormones involved and the different energy levels. Like we really are like the moon where we change every single day. We're waxing and waning every day.
I think that is so beautiful too when you learn how your body works differently, not only every day, but within a month. You get to experience so many different facets of your own um, body, the way that it functions, and the way that I I really really am enjoying like every single phase of the
Mhm.
cycle and giving myself rest and then being very productive and very emotional and all of that. It's such a beautiful journey that I don't think when I was younger anyone taught me anything about these. Like I had no idea. I, like you mentioned at the beginning, I grew up with this idea that I needed to work, produce on
Mhm.
a 24-hour schedule, right? For women, it's different. And I do believe that there is a connection in the way that we're not honoring our cycles and our body and the problems that we are facing, like at least for me, I do feel like that was my experience. I had a lot of problems with my menstrual cycle precisely because I was never honoring my timing. I was always fighting against it and I hated
Mm-hmm.
it for many years. I hated having a period and the pain and bleeding. It was a fight against my own nature. So that
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things that I needed to reconcile with. What are your thoughts in regards to the different menstrual health dysfunctions, endometriosis, PMDD? You had experience with that. How is this impacting our life and our well-being?
Well, endometriosis definitely impacts our life when we're working every day and when we have to go to school every day, or whatever our lifestyle is. Usually endometriosis really interrupts that. Like when I had it, I would have to call in sick to work, and it was just like a constant, like every single month I'd be like, sorry this is happening again, but like I'm a woman and I have to, this is just my life, like I'm sorry, but like, and sometimes I would even lose my job, and it was really frustrating. And with PMDD, that, oh my gosh, I wouldn't even wish that on my worst enemy, because PMDD can be so severe where just a couple of days before your period, you're just like having suicidal thoughts, or you're having just like these thoughts of like worthlessness. And it can just be so severe that it really impacts the way that we work, how we relate to our relationships. Um, there's so much, there's so much in our lives that it impacts. And I think that the sad thing is that most people just think that they just have to deal with it. They're just like, okay, well, this is, I got diagnosed with this and I just have to learn how to work with it. And it really is just a dysfunction of the uterus and the hormones. And there, I have never worked with a woman where it hasn't, like when I tell her the different things that she can do to heal these symptoms, like I've never had it not work for someone. It really is just a matter of nutrition. It's a matter of lifestyle, and it really is a matter of looking at our bodies differently and understanding that our bodies require different things than men.
I remember a quote from Dr. Gabor. Can't remember the last name, but
I think Mate, Garbor Mate. Is that
yes,
right?
yes, yes. Oh, he's one of my favorite. He said once that pain was the language of our body. Like whenever you're experiencing pain,
Hmm.
your body's trying to communicate something. It's trying to tell you
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, exactly. It's just trying to communicate to you.
Right. And I feel like that was my experience with every problem that I encountered. It was a huge message for me to get to understand my body better, how it works, what I need. And you know that sometimes my needs were so basic as I need to sleep more. I need to eat
Hmm.
more of this, less of that. And I believe that sometimes we're so quick to I need a painkiller. I need
Hmm.
to medicate myself. And then I try to numb or ignore that pain or kill it. But then the message gets ignored and it goes away. And then I'm missing a very important information about my own.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I hope that you're enjoying this conversation and that you are finding value in the insights that we are sharing. I wanted to just send a quick note to clarify that when I'm speaking about not inviting people not to numb their pain with painkillers, medication, drugs, or in whatever form, I am not shaming anyone for using painkillers or any form of medication or medicine. For example, for decades, I had my specific prescription of what I needed to take during my periods because otherwise I could have not functioned. I have so much respect for the pain that we experience, and I hope that you can feel that my invitation to sit down with your pain comes from a place of reverence and not so much from a place of masochism where you gotta deal with it and, you know, like, don't take any pills, don't take any medication. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Perhaps if what works for you is that you start monitoring what's happening throughout the month and then make changes and see how the level of pain increases or decreases, that is also really, really helpful. And I praise any kind of awareness and change and action in that regard.
So, what are some common misconceptions or myths about menstrual health that you have encountered while doing your research or while educating other women?
Um, there's two that come to mind right now. The most common one is that women just assume that we are supposed to be in pain. Not just women, but everyone. Everyone just assumes we're supposed to be in pain during our menstrual phase. And that's so not true. Like you said, our when we're in pain, it's information and our body is trying to communicate to us that something is wrong. Um, and then the other one is that getting a hysterectomy is sometimes a good answer to the pain. I do think that in some cases it could be a good option, but in most cases it can actually do more damage. There's so many benefits to the menstrual cycle. When it is working correctly and there's very minimal pain, um, our ovaries release hormones throughout the cycle that help with heart health, that help with mental health, that help with our muscular system and help with bone health. There's so many different things that the menstrual cycle helps with, that removing the uterus just weakens the body. It really can just weaken the body, and then you can feel even more pain, not just in the uterus, but you can start feeling pain in your muscles and pain in your heart and your bones and things like that. So that's another way that our body will communicate to us that something is wrong. But at that point, you can't really do anything because you just removed the most important organ that helps with those things.
That is so scary.
Yeah, it is. I know so many women, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups that, sometimes they don't have anything to do with female health. But sometimes they'll just post like, oh, today is the day I'm getting my uterus removed. I'm so excited. And, like my heart just breaks for them. And would not, I would not say anything to someone like that, someone that I don't even know. But it's just something, it's just sad that we are in a society like that that's just like, oh, we can just remove this and all of our problems will go away. And, it's just such a quick fix that leads to more problems. And yeah, it's sad and it is scary because, we're not a lot of women are not given informed consent about it.
And it's from my understanding, it's becoming more common. Like, more doctors are just saying like, yeah, let's just remove it,
Mm-hmm.
avoid all the trouble. But that's so scary. I also remember reading a book, and I mentioned this in a podcast before, but um there's this book I read. It's called 9 months, I think, or nine something, but it talks about how the time that you spend in the uterus as you're being formed, right, as a
Mm-hmm.
fetus. And they in that book, the author was saying how women, we trust a male doctor who has no idea what's actually happening in your
Mm-hmm.
reproductive system. Like, we trust them with our wombs, and they had no idea. Not that they don't go to school and they are not well informed, but they really don't have that reproductive system. They don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
happening with our hormones. I don't know. It's really, really scary to, when I read that, for me, it was to understand that sometimes I trust an external source rather than my own. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
trust my own body. I don't trust my own intuition that is telling me, hey, this is not right. This isn't feeling,
Mm-hmm.
you should try that. And so I do feel like one very important part of healing is to trust your intuition and to
Mm-hmm.
listen
Yeah.
to your body. Sit down with your pain and say like, well, what are you trying to tell me, like I mentioned before, but also believing yourself, trusting that not removing it might not be like the best option. You gotta trust what your body's telling you.
Mhm.
Let me tell you about a myth that I have encountered frequently, and that is that our blood is dirty. There's
Mm.
this concept, and I grew up with the same idea, like, oh, your menstrual blood, yucky.
Mhm.
Have you heard some ideas about these, like your blood's dirty,
Mhm.
don't touch
Yeah.
it, don't.
Yeah, so I do feel like that stemmed from the Bible. I mean, it's probably stemmed from lots of different things, but I know that the Bible mentions something about a man should not lay with his wife while she's menstruating because she's unclean. And I don't remember the exact words, but I know that the translation was actually off a little bit. There was no word for the word that they used for unclean. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but like um they used a word for what she was experiencing while she was menstruating and like I feel like I'm not going to explain this well. I'm sorry. Um but like the only thing that they could think of that was similar to that word was uncleanliness. And but really it was just they were in a place of kind of in between. Back then they used to believe that while a woman was menstruating they were closer to God and they had their intuition was stronger. And so it wasn't that he would be unclean if he lied with her while she was menstruating. It was more about like this was a time for her to reflect on things. This was a time for her to meditate, to become closer to God. And so it was just like not, in their culture it wasn't a time to be intimate, and so it had nothing to do with uncleanliness. It was just, it was something completely different than that. But whoever translated the Bible into English, they just decided to use that word. So but yeah, and there's a lot of stigma around it being dirty. And really, I just think it's messy. Like, yeah, of course, like it's messy, but there's so many benefits to the menstrual blood as well. Like when you're having a healthy cycle, your menstrual blood has stem cells in it. I think that's the right word, right? Yeah, it has stem cells in it. So it actually could be, there's research going into whether or not we can use stem cells from menstrual blood instead of cord blood from babies, um, because it really could like save a lot of lives, and there's a lot of benefits to menstrual blood. But yeah, there's like that whole stigma around it.
And as far as I understand, that's exactly we're so what is being shed, all that blood that is being shed is the blood that was forming a potential embryo, or it was,
Yeah,
but so that means that that blood was good for creating life.
yeah, that's
So
right. Yeah, yeah, because when
it
you become pregnant, your period, I mean, technically it stops, but it doesn't really stop because that period blood is now going into the placenta and nourishing a baby. So yeah, definitely.
exactly. So for all our listeners out there, if you have a little bit of a there's this stigma or this idea that your blood is unclean, or that you're unclean during your period, please, let's erase that from our mind, from our collective. I do have a beautiful relationship with my blood, and I do feel like it also has messages, like it tells you how
Hmm.
healthy your cycle is, or maybe if there are a few things that you might
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
mention too. My next question for you is, how do you approach supporting individuals with menstrual health dysfunctions in your practice?
So I approach it in, well, I need to know a lot of information from someone when they're coming to me asking for help. A lot of people will come into my inbox and just be like, "Hey, I'm having really bad cramps. Can you help me?" Like I eat pretty healthy, but I need to know so much more details than just I'm pretty healthy, but I'm having these cramps because there's so much that goes into health and nourishment. and also there's this like diet culture, there's so many diets out there that say that it's the most healthiest when really it could be destroying your hormones. So I approach it with lots of questions, like what is your actual diet? Like I hear that you say that you're healthy, but like what are you actually eating? And not only eating, but what are you consuming on a daily basis with, your relationships and with entertainment and social media? Like what kind of things are you doing with your life? Are you honoring your cycle? Um, are you listening to your body? Are you listening to the pain? I think the biggest one is really just about healthy, their healthy diet. Because yeah, like I said earlier, like so many people think they're eating healthy, but there's so much more to food than just being healthy. Like there's also nourishment, and I do feel like there is a difference between being healthy and being nourished. There's a lot of foods out there that have been stigmatized of like being bad for you, like milk or butter or, meat. And those are some of the most healthy foods that you can have that will really nourish your cycle. So, um, yeah, did that answer your question?
Yeah. And I love how you said that it's an individual journey. I've noticed that there are some very specific things that help me during my cycle, and there are other things that they can be like silly, like ice cream, like when you
Hmm.
you watch the movies and you're like you're eating all the chocolate ice cream in the world. But to me, that is so, I'm not saying that it's unhealthy. What I'm saying is that it makes me feel a lot more pain during
Hmm.
a cycle. And this requires a lot of awareness from my end. I need to, like be very cautious about what am I eating
Hmm.
this cycle before I start menstruating. What did I eat? And how much of things did I put into my body? And even like, yeah, sleeping habits, that's for sure. That's something that I need to
Yeah.
track, make sure that I'm sleeping well. And how much water am I drinking? Because sometimes, like that's one of my biggest problems. I get so busy and I'm all
Hmm.
up and down. And then the only thing I don't remember is to drink water, which is
Hmm.
something so basic, but I
Yeah.
struggle. So yeah, it's a very individual
Yeah.
journey. I like that you said that. What are some holistic practices that come to your mind that can help women improve their menstrual health?
I think one big one would be making sure that you're eating enough. I think in in our society, we're told to, eat less or um, stop eating carbs or, like so many different things where, that's bad, don't do this. And eating enough really is important, making sure that you are getting enough carbs, making sure you're getting enough protein, and also having some fat with that as well. That will really help a lot because when I was experiencing the worst of the endometriosis, I was hardly eating anything and I had a very, very stressful lifestyle. I had just gotten married. I was going to college and I had two different jobs. And I barely had time to eat. Like, I think I would have like a protein bar in the morning or something like that. And it was so bad for my hormones, especially at the age that I was at, where, I should have been in my prime and like in like my healthiest stage, but it was the worst. My hormones were all over the place. So yeah, making sure that you are eating enough. The other one I would say is yoni steaming. For listeners who don't know what it is, it's when you basically sit over a pot of water without pants or underwear on. I usually put like a blanket around me so that the heat doesn't escape. And you can put herbs in the water, so it's kind of like a tea for your vulva. And it nourishes the skin, and the steam can also go up into the vagina to nourish the uterus. It can help cleanse it. It can help just remove any old blood that has been. That was another issue that I had was when I would get my period, it would be really, really dark, like brown or black. And that just meant that I had a lot of like stagnation and a lot of like stuck blood from like previous cycles. So doing a yoni steam can be really helpful, and it can just kind of set the uterus back where it needs to be. Um, in terms of like location, because sometimes your uterus can be a little bit like twisted, but also in terms of just like setting hormones correctly, and things like that. Another really good habit is just learning how to say no, learning how to rest. If something, if you're asked to do something, um, and you don't have the capacity to do it, I think being able to like have those difficult conversations and saying no. Um, because when we do start the luteal phase and then go into menstruation, our hormone levels start to decrease, which is really funny because I know that like when you're on your period, a lot of people say like, if you're in a bad mood, like, oh, you're so hormonal, when really like our hormones actually start to decrease. We're having less hormones, and so that's why our energy levels go down. Um, and so just learning how to say no around that time of the cycle.
What would you advise to younger women um, who want to learn more about their hormones? Like I don't feel like we learn. At least I didn't, and as far as I
Mm-hmm.
can see, my students they don't know anything about their hormones. When they learn about their menstruation, it's all about well, the blood's gonna come this way, and this is what it's gonna every
Mm-hmm.
28 days, and you get a pad or a tampon. That's it, but there's nothing about what hormones are involved, what changes will come. So if anyone who's younger, um, and they perhaps are curious about what changes are going on in your body and they want to learn more about the hormonal balance or imbalance, what would be your advice? Where can they start?
Um, I would start with reading books about it. And while you were asking that question, I was trying to think of books that I have read, and I cannot think of any at the moment. But just trying to like learn as much as you can about your body, because you're really not going to get a lot of information from school. Um, and I know there are some moms out there who have educated themselves, but not there haven't been very many. Um, so yeah, just getting, like I said earlier in the beginning of this recording, I just let Google become my best friend. Like I just always constantly was Googling things. There are some really good books about the menstrual cycle and that go into the details of the hormones and the fluctuations and, the the way that your body should be working when your cycle is healthy and balanced. Um, so yeah, just learning as much as you can about your body. And being patient with it as well. Because in the beginning it can feel very daunting. Because it's like you can do all the things that you're supposed to be doing to heal your cycle, and then your period will end, and then you continue doing those things, and then you won't really know if they're working until your next period. And so it can become very frustrating just as the cycles go on. But yeah, just having patience for yourself and grace. Um, let's see, that's all I can think of right now. But yeah, just knowing about your body and how it works is probably the most valuable information I think that you can have about this.
Beautiful, beautiful. I do feel like also tracking how many days you're bleeding, how many
Mm-hmm.
days, like each cycle in between, how much pain you experience this one
Mm-hmm.
cycle, and perhaps the next cycle you didn't experience any pain. So um, write it down, like document. Did I
Mm-hmm.
eat something different? Did I change one of my habits? Am I honoring my cycle better, more?
Mm-hmm.
No. And yeah, so one of the books that I probably this was one of the first books that I read. It's called Wild Power.
Mm-hmm.
Discover the magic of your menstrual cycle and awaken the feminine path to power. by Alexandra Pope. And I do feel like it was a little bit slow at the beginning, like a few hundred pages. I could probably skip that. It was a little slow, but then at the end, it is a very informative book, and I don't think it speaks that much about hormones specifically, but
Mhm.
it's all very detail oriented about the menstrual cycle and how it works and how it is an empowering time when you're menstruating for
Mhm.
women, and how you can like access more of that empowered state of
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
when you're
yeah.
menstruating. And one of the things that they mentioned in there was that you also need to be aware of what dreams you're having, like
Mhm.
while you are menstruating. Like everything is important, everything is a message. And i
Mhm.
i do feel like for people who are not so into the esoteric part of like dreams and stuff, that's completely fine. But I do feel like the message at the end is, how much do you know yourself? How
Mhm.
much time are you investing in actually like listening to your own body speaking, and your
Mhm.
even, yeah, like how are the things that you're experiencing impacting you will come out subconsciously when you're dreaming. That's my belief, maybe
Mhm.
not.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, paying attention to the small details is definitely something that can help, and that has helped me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think keeping a menstrual cycle journal, I think, can be really, really helpful. With for everything that you mentioned, just documenting your dreams, documenting, how you're feeling, how it was different from last cycle, what you have been eating. I tend to journal during the times that I'm not feeling so well. Um, I actually did start having some PMDD symptoms come back, like after like 10 years of not having it. And I just, like documented like how I was feeling, the intense emotions around it, what was going on in my life around this time, like what might have triggered it, and then all of the things that I had been eating, all, like what I had been consuming in terms of entertainment and relationships and things like that. So, yeah, a menstrual cycle journal can be really, really helpful.
Do you have any last advice? Are there any other things that you would like to share with women, like you feel it's very important for them to know?
Yeah, just like learning as much as you can about your body. Because you're really like, it's really hard to find a school that actually teaches about your body, like in detail. Um, so yeah, just learning as much as you can about your body, and what kinds of foods help you feel good and what foods do not help you feel so good. Um, and yeah, like keeping a journal. I think that keeping a journal can be super, super valuable in starting the journey. And being able to look back on it and like seeing your progress. I think that is also just amazing. Sometimes I look back on journals and I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot how bad it was. Like, you can see how far you've come.
I do have one last question. Now I thought about it. Um, so I was telling you about my experience. My first, probably my second period was a very painful one, and I
Hmm.
couldn't handle it. And since then, until I was like 30 something, I have very, very painful, excruciating, painful periods. Like it was terrible. And then I began learning about womb wellness and how to connect with your womb, and giving it a voice, and like everything, journaling, trying to become friends with my menstrual cycle. But I've interviewed a lot of women, that not a lot, a few actually, that have never experienced pain during their menstrual cycles. And there was one woman, because I'm Mexican, and there was one woman that I interviewed. She's also Mexican. And something she told me was that she had her first period, her grandmother made this ritual to celebrate, like
Hmm.
her passage, and
Hmm.
she bathed her with flowers and with special um, medicinal herbs, And
Mhm.
and there was a whole ritual. There was a prayer and a blessing, and it was so beautiful. I have it documented, and I'll probably translate it to English. That was something that impacted me so much because my experience of how I transition into, like um woman was so different. There was a lot of
Mhm.
shame, there was a lot of pain, and there was a lot of like nobody wanted to talk to me about anything, and so I had to figure things out myself. It was very, very dark. I wanted to ask you, do you have any rituals, ceremonies? Are you into that kind of thing, like that you can recommend to women,
Mhm.
specifically when they're transitioning, like first
Mhm.
period, or even perhaps their last periods, transitioning to
Yeah.
menopause? What are your
Mhm.
thoughts about
Yeah, for sure. I love that some people practice monarch rituals because yeah, like I do feel like your first period has a huge impact on the way that your cycle will go for the rest of your life. If you are met with shame when you first have your period, yeah, it can definitely impact your mental state throughout your cycles. It can impact the amount of pain that you'll have for sure. Those are absolutely correlated. I don't specifically do rituals for my cycle. I like the idea of it. I love the idea of it, but I'm just so busy with my little kids that I just like, my period shows up and I'm like, ugh, I just don't have time to do anything. But yeah, I have attended monarch ceremonies. There are some really beautiful ones where I went to one where they were like a bunch of girls who were about to start. Their bodies were changing and they may not have started yet. Or some of them had started, but it was right around that time. And I don't remember all of the details, but it was so beautiful. It was just like all of those girls and the moms coming together, celebrating womanhood, talking about, um, the importance of their role of being a woman and the importance of, their hormones and their cycle. Um, we talked about how empowered we feel, how empowered we have felt about being a woman. There was a lot of, yeah, there was just a lot of things that we talked about, just like the um, the power of being a woman. Like it was so so beautiful, and I feel like I'm not doing it justice because it was so long ago and I don't really remember. But um, yeah, I think that just like coming together with other women and their daughters and just being able to talk about it and talk about it openly and talking about how it's nothing to be ashamed of and it's something that is important for our bodies to bring life.
that? And what you just described was so beautiful, and I think that that's it. Just having other
Hmm.
women and hearing positive experiences, and there's no shame, there's
Hmm.
no like secrets. It's beautiful, and
Hmm.
it's so openly spoken about, and that's the secret. That's
Hmm.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really beautiful. um
Hmm.
Thank you so so much,
You're
Lilibeth, for all
welcome.
your wisdom, for your expertise. I want to invite our listeners to check out resources, look for information. I hope that this episode can spark your interest, and like you can get into researching your own questions. Be curious. There's a lot of information out there, and this topic is an expansive. We won't be able to cover everything in such a
Mhm.
short amount of time. However, I want to remind you that your health and well being is so important. We need to take care of our body, and we need to listen to our body and prioritize our needs. Lilibet, is there anything else that you would like to say?
No, I think that was good. I think that about covers it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for everything and for your patience as well.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in, and take care until next time.
Are you poised for this journey? I am thrilled to have you in my circle, and I am buzzing with excitement to conjure up some magic together. Remember, in Goddess Unleashed, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the mystical walk. Tune in and transform with me. Until next time, keep your spirits high and your magic untamed.